Welcome to the Nukapedia podcast. We do have some Fallout news and later an interview with Cellblock Psycho from Tales of New Reno, Ashfall and many more mods. But first, we cross to New California Radio for a brand new series.
For years, we've been told the heroism and impossible tales of the Vault Dweller, and how they saved us all from certain doom. But how true is this? I'm Shady Sands Sue, and join us as we ask Vault Dweller, man, myth, or monster? The earliest accounts of the Vault Dweller, as the legends go, start here in my hometown, Shady Sands. The stories would have us believe that despite access to great technology left over by Vault-Tec, what is now the capital of civilized world was once a small, helpless village at the mercy of raiders and rad scorpions. And had it not been for the Vault Dweller, then one or both these threats would have seen the end of the Republic before it could have really began. Indeed, we are supposed to believe that President Tandy herself was kidnapped by the Khans. But does this reflect reality? As even older tales tell us that Shady Sands began from the Vault Dwellers from Vault 15. The idea that Shady Sands would become some defenseless village clinging for life simply defies any sort of logic. But I digress. Looking further into these facts, no evidence has been found of any sort of nest of rad scorpions. Much like the fabled vault itself, no sign can be found of this supposed cave. While some might claim that this is evidence that the Vault Dweller did indeed save the town, an absence of evidence is not evidence of eradication. As for the supposed raid, this raider tale has become politically convenient in later years, being used as justification for the annexation of a small village near the vault and the pacification of other raider groups. Is it the truth, or mere propaganda? Was she really taken? Or did she just wander off as kids are known to do? Maybe she even went with them willingly when lost. Only President Tandy can say for sure, and she isn't talking. But yet, despite all of this, we can be certain that the Vault Dweller did indeed pass through Shady Sands. Curtis, who farmed at the time of the visit, talked to us.
Oh yes, I remember the Vault Dweller. They lectured me about some agricultural nonsense, as if they'd ever spent a day in their life in the hot sun, trying to grow razor grain, or much of anything else. I humored them, and they soon went away. As if some Vault Dweller knows more about working the land than someone who's done it their entire life. But you know, afterwards, we noticed that some things had gone missing. Some tools, a sledgehammer, really random stuff. Then, when it came time to plow the fields, we noticed our ropes were missing.
Ropes?
Yes, we were using them to get the Brahmin to pull the plow, and that really set us back. At first, we thought maybe we misplaced them, or they were destroyed in a storm. So we went to consult the scout handbooks a few of us had hidden away to help us build new ropes, but they were all gone.
Gone?
Yeah, it was the strangest thing. Who would steal 3 copies of the same book? It ain't gonna make you 3 times more smart.
Now, of course, we can't say for sure based on this that it was the Vault Dweller who was responsible for this. But as we will see, it's the start of a pattern that will follow the Vault Dweller through the legends. As a result of the Vault Dweller's visit, a once thriving, self-sufficient, independent community faced famine. While some might argue this was for the best, leading to the formation of a republic, in reality, this entirely avoidable problem changed nothing. Other towns in California united without an artificial famine driving them towards working with the Brotherhood of Steel and other towns. It makes you think, doesn't it? I've been Shady Sands Sue, and this has been the Vault Dweller, man, myth, monster. A Jacorian production for the New California Radio.
And now, the news. Official misconduct claims regarding Chris Avellone have been withdrawn. Carissa Barrows and Kelly Ray Bristol made claims against Mr. Avellone in 2020, with him losing work and opportunities as a result of these claims. A year later, Avellone fired back with a libel suit, and this withdrawal is part of that settlement, which is described as a seven-figure number. Additionally, the women in question have also released a statement saying that they are unaware of any such actions by Mr. Chris Avellone. For those of you unaware, Chris Avellone was one of the major developers of Fallout 2, heavily involved in the Van Buren project, as well as New Vegas. There's a new roleplay hub for Fallout 76 fans who are looking for a group. You'll find them at rbh76.com. You'll also find their links to their Discord. If you're part of the Patreon for the Chad podcast, they're offering an opportunity to voice a character. Check out the post on their Patreon. This closes April 30. Walter and Bunny are back with more true Vault Escapades. If you haven't caught the stories of these two gumshoes in a classic-style detective audio drama, now is the perfect time to start with the beginning of Season 6. You'll find that on all good podcast players, or check them out on Twitter at ABombRadio. On April 30, Wes Johnson will be hosting a private hangout raising money for Fallout for Hope and Alzheimer's disease. You'll find them on the Fallout for Hope Twitter. That's your Nukapedia Network news. You can tell us your news at NukaFalloutWiki@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at Nukapedia.
This episode of the NukaPedia PIPcast is brought to you by the followers of the apocalypse, making the wasteland better, one day and project at a time.
So this week on the Mod Squad, we're talking to Cellblock Psycho. He's involved with a number of mods. One of those that we're going to talk about this week is Tales of New Reno. Thanks very much for joining us, Cellblock.
Oh, hey, Agent C. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
So I start all my interviews with asking, how did you get into Fallout? Are you a new fan? Are you an old fan? Or are you something in between?
Well, that's an interesting question. I feel it's very difficult to properly answer it, as my first Fallout game was Fallout Tactics, and a lot of people get that confused with Fallout Brotherhood of Steel for the PS2. I'm referring to the tactical combat game Fallout Tactics, which came out in 2001. I actually played that when I was probably far too young to be playing such games. I was like around 3 when that came out. Later on, I got into Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, and then eventually the newer games.
Tactics, that's certainly a unique entry point. We had Mandy on recently from 13, who said her first one was Shelter. After Tactics, did you then go into the classic games, or was it more the modern game?
Hence the classic games. They just kind of fell into my lap. I found them at a yard sale, and I bought them and played them then. Wasn't into it at the time, but after playing New Vegas, I think I got back into them and enjoyed them much more than I did when I was 8. Every once in a while, I'll do a playthrough of them. I find them very enjoyable.
Did you then move on to 3 and then New Vegas, or was it straight to New Vegas?
I think I played 3 first, and then eventually New Vegas, but they never really ran well on my PC for a while. So it took a while for me to actually warm up to them, but I eventually did.
Awesome. Now, we know from some of your work from Fallout Ashfall, and we've introduced Ash from that project in the past, but I know there's been a lot of interest in Tales of New Reno. Can you tell us about the mod, where it's based, and what the story's like?
I'll give you 3 guesses where the story takes place. Yeah, that's right. It takes place in San Francisco. I know the name's a bit misleading, but yeah. No, in all seriousness, the mod series is actually episodic. Yes, it does take place in Reno, but not just that. The mod series revolves around a new location with every episode, with the scope getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Episode 0-1 take place in the Mojave, Episode 2 takes place in Utah, and Episode 3, being the finale of the series, takes place in New Reno itself. And this series is actually a remake, technically, because I started this series in 2014 with a good friend of mine. We kind of both decided we wanted to make this mod for New Vegas in our spare time, because I started modding officially in 2012 when I was starting high school. And me and my friend decided it might be kind of cool to do that in our free period. He brought his laptop and made an account, and we kind of fooled around with this idea of making a Fallout mod that was more focused on the crime elements, because I always found that kind of interesting. So we wanted to do like a Grand Theft Auto meets Fallout New Vegas kind of thing. God, then that first mod came out. I was able to release it in 2014. It's not good. It's shit. Don't play it. That's why it needed to be remade. And that original series lasted from 2014 to about 2016, right about when Fallout 4 came out. And that was going to be it for me for New Vegas modding, but I took one look at how Fallout 4's creation kit is set up and did not feel like relearning the whole thing. I do not like how it's set up, so I decided to go with what I know and decided to keep working on New Vegas mods. And looking back at the Tales of Reno series, I decided let's remake that because that was a load of dog shit.
Come on, we're always our own worst critics.
I suppose so, yes.
No,
but honestly, it was very bad.
Now, you have mentioned you've chosen to release this as an episodic mod where others wait for the whole story to be complete before release. Is there a reason why you've chosen to go down the episodic path?
Well, originally, this was a remake of an older series. Originally, those mods were meant to be standalone, each one, where each one was like its own story. While I started working on the remake, I decided to go an episodic route so I could slowly improve my skill and get more ambitious with each project. And also because it's a remake, so I wanted to follow the pattern of how I originally started with each story beat and so forth. So that's the whole reason behind that. And if you've played the mod series, you'll know the first 2 mods take place in New Vegas. But the second mod, or I guess rather third in the series, I decided to call one of them Zero because, I don't know why. I guess I'm stupid. Who knows? Maybe I forgot how to count. But episode 2, that mod took a couple years, and God, that's the first one I actually had help with. That was interesting trying to get a team set up for that and find reliable people to help me out. But a lot of that work was mostly me. The mod is about, I want to say the world space is about like half the size of New Vegas. It's got like a good 80 or so quests, and we cast 112 different voice actors for it. Huge undertaking.
Wow. How do you find 112 voice actors?
Well, a lot of blackmail. There was probably more than 112, but it eventually went down to 112 because there was a lot of voice actors that ended up hiring and then you never hear from them again. That's unfortunately how it works. And being a voice actor myself, it kind of goes for both ends. Sometimes casting directors you never hear from either.
Well, I've had a look on your Discord and I can see you have a full slate of projects. What's the most exciting thing that you're working on, be it this mod or something else?
Well, currently I'm taking a break from the Reno series because the current episode that's coming up is the world space is about the size of New Vegas, if not maybe a little bigger, with the city of Reno itself being like a large portion of the map. What I'm focusing on right now is this another mod that I came up with. It's called Come Wander With Me, and I hope to release it sometime this year. It involves 8 new world spaces, all of which are complete. All of this mod is done completely by me, and because I've been working on mods so long, I was able to properly organize myself to get this done efficiently. One of my main focuses for this, which I want to incorporate in Tales of New Reno 3, which is why I didn't jump immediately to that, is I want to incorporate more branching paths and storytelling, because I feel like a lot of Fallout mods, or even just Fallout in general, don't really follow that. And if I want to take a step further, games in general don't really follow a true branching story path where you get completely different stories based on a single choice. Kind of like how the Telltale games tell you your choices matter, but in reality they don't. But so that's kind of my goal with this, is to make your choices really matter. So in a sense, I'm writing like 12 different stories for this one mod.
Yeah, I have heard that is one of the arguments against doing branching things, that you're having to basically write multiple games that people aren't going to experience. How do you manage that kind of workload?
I measure my time out properly. I have a clear idea of what I want to do, and I just start working on it. Usually I'll just listen to a good song and really get into it, and then before I know it, it's midnight and I should go to bed.
That sounds very familiar. Now, you have mentioned that you have been doing this for over 10 years now, and you've also mentioned that you weren't a big fan of the Fallout 4 creation kit. But is there something that keeps bringing you back to New Vegas to keep modding that rather than find something new to work on?
Well, honestly, the only reason I still work on New Vegas is because I have so many projects that I've started and not finished, and the fact that I know it so well. That's pretty much my only reason.
Well, they say true art is never completed, just abandoned. What is the greatest challenge that you've had to date, and what advice would you give anyone trying to follow in your footsteps to beat that?
I feel like my biggest challenge is relying on other people to get things done, because that's not always been something I've been good with, because people can be so unreliable, especially when they don't share the same vision or ambition that I do. Still, I was able to find some people that were able to come through, and I appreciate that. So I don't really have any advice on how to overcome that. That's more of a personal issue for me. Other than that, I would say that there really hasn't been many challenges. The GEC is not really that hard to figure out as long as you have time and patience. In fact, I've been even considering making a tutorial series about it, but I unfortunately don't have the time and patience for that.
Well, let us know if that's something that you do get into, because we'd love to be a part of that. Now, something that we do try and do on this show is highlight other creators. Are there other creators out there that have caught your eye that you think we should be spotlighting or talking about more?
Oh, of course. There are plenty of projects out there that don't get enough attention that really should. Of course, you know Fallout Ashfall. I've become the lead level designer of that project, and I did watch your previous podcast interviewing them. That was rather entertaining. And I'm also doing voice work for the Fallout Podcast 13. I play various characters within it so far. And on top of that, there are a numerous amount of New Vegas projects that not a lot of people are talking about. Mainly the focus has been on the Frontier, which I was a part of that as well, which unfortunately is no more since the rework fell through, and Nuevo Mexico, which is a mod I've been looking at, and I'm sure everybody knows about that. Everyone's been talking about that within the Fallout community. It does look very promising. But other than that, there are a ton of projects that you really don't hear too much about, and I think should get attention. Starting off with Fallout the Odyssey, which is a Fallout mod that takes place in Alaska with the Enclave and Brotherhood. I've been helping them with some interiors, and it is a pretty massive mod. Looks to be more combat focused, but there's still that Fallout charm in there. There's also a mod called Kingman, which is made by a friend of mine, Agent Fuse, who's working to develop a world space that delves more into Legion territory, and that looks pretty exciting. There's Rose City Tales, is pretty much what's become of the Fallout rework at this point. They're starting from the ground up, and they're doing their own episodic stories taking place in Portland, which it's going to be on a lot smaller scale than the Frontier, but I have faith that they're going to bring some really cool stuff with that as well. There's The Gift, which is a mod I've been helping with. It's a mod by Riku Riku. I can't really get into details about that one yet, but it involves a world space that takes place in between Fallout 4's Boston and Nuka World, but it's in the New Vegas engine.
That's an interesting combination.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice, but the world space is looking pretty good. And then we got Fallout The Chosen's Way, a remake of Fallout 2 in New Vegas, and there are just some pictures of that are just chef's kiss. My God, those people are really talented. Probably like 100 times more talented than I could ever hope to be. And last but not least, there's Revelation Blues, which, if you're not familiar, is a mod that aims to recreate Van Buren, the canceled Fallout 3. And I haven't seen too much about it. I'm hoping to join the team, but the idea sounds very promising to me. That should about do it for my list.
Wow, trying to redo Van Buren, that would be a very daunting task.
Yeah, it really would be. And I apologize, I'm just shooting out a ton of projects, but I get around.
That's absolutely fine. We'll have a link to some of those down in the description, and a few of those we've talked to previously, and we'll have links to those interviews down there as well. Now, if anyone does want to follow your work, what are the best ways to do it and best ways to keep in touch and on track of what you're doing?
Well, I would say to follow me on Discord mainly. I have a Twitter, I have a YouTube. I do not use them that much because I don't care for Twitter or social media in general. I'm usually kind of a hermit when it comes to these things. But if you join my Discord, we can chat, we can have a good time, share some beers, share some laughs, the whole thing. I'm mostly active on there, is what I'm trying to say.
And we'll have a link to that down there in the description as well. Thanks very much for joining us there, Cellblock.
It's been a pleasure. I love talking with you, man.
As I walked out in the streets of New Reno, as I walked out in New Reno one day, I spied a young cowboy all wrapped in white linen, and cold as the clay. Oh, beat the drum slowly and play the fife lowly, play the dead march as you bear me alone. Take me to the valley and lay the sod o'er me. I'm a young cowboy, I know I've done wrong. I see by your outfit that you are a cowboy. These words he did say as I slowly walked by. Come sit down beside me and hear my sad story. I'm shot in the chest and today I must die. Go bring me a cup a cup of cold water to cool my parched lips, the cowboy then said. Before I returned, his soul had departed and gone to the roundup, the cowboy was dead. Oh, beat the drum slowly and play the fife lowly. Play the dead march as you bear me along. Take me to the valley and lay the sod o'er me, for I'm a young cowboy, I know I've done wrong.